We are working harder than ever before, and still it feels like we are stuck. We have meeting after meeting after meeting, and still clarity is missing. We cannot really pinpoint what it is. These are very common sentiments that I myself had many times during my career, where I was working on the whole unicorn journey from Series A to Series D, going through hypergrowth, blitzscaling, to doing painful restructurings and downsizings in other companies, helping companies to get acquired, or just clocking in a boring, overstructured, bureaucratic company. I've seen messy, chaotic companies and everything in between that you can imagine. There is a certain commonality between any form of commercial organization. Commonality number one is we have a great responsibility as leaders to direct our organizational resources in creating organizational outcomes. And often we lack bandwidth because when we grow very, very fast, when we take decisions to move the needle and to push forward, we sometimes have to neglect structure, order, and the proper processes. We have to deal with that later. But sometimes that later never comes because our bandwidth is again completely clogged up by all the new firefighting, all the new situations that emerge as we move from stage through stage through stage on our growth journey and our journey towards success. Especially founders, CEOs, and top managers in companies between 10 million to 100 million revenue, or startups and scale-ups that just got funded and are now starting off on their growth trajectory, or have just come out of a very intense phase of growing. These issues happen again and again. It often feels like a daily, never-ending firefighting. It feels like we cannot fully rely on the people around us. As leaders, we often think that we can do everybody's job better than they, but yet we have to rely on them because our hours per day are limited. We barely find time to think. Strategic white space in our calendars to actually scrutinize, think through things, and really get to the core of the issues. What we also often face is immense pressure from our stakeholders, from our environment, whether it is the market, our competitors, our investors, our board of directors, but also our employees and customers. It is an almost impossible situation to be in, and it becomes very easy to fall into the trap of becoming a piece on the chessboard. What we want to do is we want to be the architects and the designers of the chessboard. As leaders, as top managers, as founders, we are in a unique position where we have all the authority, all the agency, and often autonomy, apart from certain guardrails, of course. We have the ability to shape the organizational design. And what is sometimes being dismissed as abstract theoretical work is actually at the core of our function. As leaders, we are coordinating the resources. We create the conditions for organizational resources to be bridged through our decisions into organizational outcomes and results. Now, when we reach stuck points, when we reach points where we don't know what the next move will be, when we feel like we have exhausted our possibilities, it feels like quicksand, diminishing returns. We might turn to books. We might turn to external consultants. We might turn to scrutinizing it ourselves, trying to figure out what it is. But often we move in a world of theory, and we are often, due to the nature of human hierarchies, disconnected from the full context of our organizations. Your frontline employees might be holding right now the keys to the next move. They might have unique insights into the market, into the customers, into what's going on, these insights that never travel up the hierarchy to actually get into the decision-making rooms in the C-level or into the board of directors. This is exactly where my intervention comes in. If you're looking for a consultant to create reports, slideshows for you, that's not me. I come in to be embedded in your company for a period of 6 weeks to 12 weeks, depending on the scope and what we're dealing with, in order to on the ground live with your employees, be around your employees on sites, your leaders, and with you to identify and to deeply diagnose the context of the organization from all angles. There's a methodology to it. And identify our strategic leverage points where, if we set these particular topics as priority, we will see disproportionately high outcomes. It's always easy to get busy for the sake of busyness. But what we want to do is we want to clearly understand the context and then move only into leveraged action and work with an internal project management team that reports to me to make those changes. Now, as we work on those changes and as we then make adjustments in the company, I will also be working with those leaders on building their capabilities, their capacities for continuity. So once I'm out again, they will carry it forward. They will become the champions of that change. Change doesn't stick if it's externally imposed. Frameworks don't stick either if they come from some textbook. Change only sticks if there is an adjustment in worldviews and beliefs in the inner mental operating system. One area of intervention that I'm often called into are revenue organizations, the commercial engines of a company. That means marketing, sales, customer success / account management, product and finance. Now, product and finance might not always be treated as part of the revenue organization, though I would argue they play a very important part in all of this. It's easy to get stuck in top-line growth, in month-over-month growth, in satisfying investors' expectations or other shareholders' expectations, stakeholders' expectations. But if we want to secure the long-term survivability and long-term value generation of our company, we need to look beyond one-off transactions and initial customer acquisition. We want to look into how do we actually nurture the market on the marketing side? How do we do sales that actually builds long-term relationships? How do we build and insert products that can actually lead to renewals, to upselling, expansion revenue? And how do we use our account management, our customer success teams to drive even more revenue? Which obviously in this case is cost-efficient revenue because we already paid our sales and marketing dollars in the initial customer acquisition. So by looking at the revenue organization as a whole, everybody's worldviews and beliefs in that interventions are going to be inevitably changed. You will see product teams talking about commercial topics, talking about pricing, talking about competitors, talking about how to increase revenue by developing certain features. The goal of an intervention is to create change that lasts and to make a structural intervention, not just a tactical feel-good project, but to make a structural intervention that will last and that creates additional ripple effects over time, right? That changes the operating mode of the company. Now, for different companies, these interventions will look different. I firmly reject the idea that you can take an external framework from a textbook, from a business school, and force it on your company. After everything I've seen, real solutions can only come from the unique context that you are in. The best you can get to is a competitor who might be somewhat comparable to you, but it's very unlikely that that competitor developed a publicly available framework that you can now copy and paste into yours. Your solutions, your structures, your operating system must emerge from your own context. And it certainly is enriched by external expertise, by existing frameworks, by industry standards, benchmarks, and so forth. No doubt about it. But it's only enriched by that. You are building your own custom operating system for the stage that you are in. And that will change over time. When your company grows, when your company makes pivots, your custom operating system also will need to develop with those changes so you can operate effectively in whatever new environment you're pivoting into. My work is focused on creating transferable enterprise value. Over the years, I found that's the best benchmark to measure operational maturity and to measure the health and long-term viability of a company. If your company could be sold tomorrow and you as an owner, as a founder, you would step out, would it still run? Would it maybe even run better without you in the picture? That is the benchmark. Is your company built on processes, on systems? Does it have intellectual property? Does it have institutional knowledge? Does it have a leadership bench? Is there a leadership team that can run the show without you, that can act in the interest of the company without you having to tell them? Can people make decisions understanding the context and understanding also the guardrails and the goals? Can they make autonomous decisions towards those goals? Or does it require constant interactions? The goal is to relieve you as a founder, as a leader, as a CEO from the day-to-day entanglement, from the firefighting, from the involvement in all of those things, and to insert structures to hold that weight on your behalf. So you can actually use your strategic bandwidth for higher level topics. This type of work is not for everyone. The sweet spot are companies between 10 to 100 million annual revenue, startups, scale-ups that are in a high growth phase or just came out of one and now need to readjust their structures for the next level in order to reach the next level. This type of work is not for leaders who want to have polished slide decks or symbolic actions or would like to have their politics validated. This is for leaders who see truth, the structural truth of their company and the external environment as the prerequisite for change, as the North Star of decisions. If you are aligned with this, and you also understand sometimes we don't have the full picture. Sometimes it can be helpful to bring somebody in with a different lens, with a different operating system, to bring a new lens into the company, a new way of operating, and then also co-developing and co-architecting the custom operating system collectively for the entire organization. If this is what you're looking for, then we have a good foundation for working together. You can reach out on info@strategic-rx.com, on LinkedIn, or on the website strategic-rx.com. And I'm looking forward to having an initial conversation with you to see if we have a good match and if an intervention even makes sense in your unique context. And if it does, I'm looking forward to be working with you down the line.